Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Guys Talking Houses. Today we are talking all the reasons you shouldn't buy a house. Mark and I have heard basically everything that you could imagine for reasons that you shouldn't buy a house, and we're going to get into some of those and whether or not there's any weight there. So Mark, let's talk, right? Because times are different. So the excuses we've heard over the last couple of years, interest rates are too high. I'm going to wait till they come back down. The inventory's too low. I'm going to wait for some more houses to hit the market. I'm sure you've got a laundry list of others.
I don't know which one of us would be the expert on this one, because I know you hear it a lot on, when they're looking at houses or the first time they go by the open house, or Zillow lead or whatever, however it came to you, there's a list of reasons.
Yeah.
We hear it, certainly it's more on the mortgage side, the credit aspect, other things. And what I've just found interesting over the last quarter century, as my kids like to say, is that there are a lot of things they'll tell me they won't tell you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things they'll tell you they won't tell me.
Well, that is true. Yeah.
Having a good, realtor-lender partnership is kind of vital to making it go smoothly, because they may know something that, we have no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea my buyer had heart issues. And we needed to do everything we could to make sure we didn't excite her too much.
Oh, wow.
Like that's a thing. So, but yeah, I mean, I've heard, of course, the credit. I'm going to improve my credit.
So usually so that would be basically my credit score is too low. I want to wait till it comes up.
Yeah. And what kills me is when they won't even apply. Like they just, no, I'm not, my credit's terrible, and then you pull it up and it's like, I don't know, 640 something. And you're like, well, were you looking at Credit Karma?
Yeah.
Because that's wrong. Like, it's not going to show you what your mortgage scores are.
Yeah. Well, you said Credit Karma can be a 40-point swing in either direction, right?
Just, at my observation, it's been anywhere 40, 60 points off either direction. And I mean, it's rare that it gets really close.
That's a meaningful difference.
That's a huge difference, and it goes both ways. I mean, somebody could tell me, oh, I got a 780 credit score. Great. We pull it up. It's a 602. What? That doesn't make any sense,
right?
And it's just the algorithm they use to calculate those scores and the system they're using to get that score. Vantage score versus FICO. We talked about that before.
So, because I wanted to ask you about that, because we've had other lenders in the past, some of the big national lenders that you would know the names of.
Yeah.
And they seem to work okay if you fit into a specific box, a very specific box. You got a 750 or better credit score, you've got a W-2 job, all that. But somebody like yourself, you're the guy I call for, well, anything really, but especially if it's something that, is a little bit more complex. Mm-hmm. So like, run me through this, because you know this way better than me, because I'll get clients and they'll say, well, my score is a 520. I can't buy a house right now. Mm-hmm. But as far as I understand it, you go down to a 500, but there's some stipulations, obviously, down payment stuff. Like, can you kind of walk me through how that looks for your stuff?
FHA, pretty much, I don't want to say everybody, because a lot of companies still do 620 is their minimum on FHA, which doesn't make sense to me. 580 is usually 3.5% down. Anything lower than that, it's going to be 10% down, but you can still buy a house. And we've done many of those over the years. And I mean, they're putting 10% down, so that adjusts the equation of whether it's a good lending decision or not. I always encourage people, let's take a look. Let's see where you are. If you truly need to improve your credit over the next year, and some of them will say, oh, I just need a month to drag my credit score from 495 to 805.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's highly unlikely, first of all, but, you can give it a shot. Or there's the other end of the spectrum. It's going to take years to fix. Like, I've got repossessions and all kinds of child support, all kinds of stuff. And then we pull the credit. It's like, well, yeah, it was like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
We don't have to deal with it. Your credit score is high enough, and sometimes I'll have buyers who will say, I'll tell them they're approved. I have one right now, she's approved. She's got all her documentation, debt to income ratio works, credit score works, everything's great. And she texted me the other day and she says, hey, I'm going to pay off my car to improve my credit. Ma'am, you're already approved. It's like being pregnant. You can't get more pregnant.
That's true.
And sometimes we'll look at a bureau and they're right that, okay, you know what? You need to do this, this, and this.
Right.
But I would rather look at that now, even if they're buying a year from now.
And you can start to put them on a plan.
Yeah.
What is there a meaningful difference between, let's say I've got the 10% down, but I've got the 30 grand for a $300,000 house, but my credit score is a 507. How much meaningful difference is there in interest rate between my rate and the guy that's got like a 780 credit score?
You know, you might be paying 3/4 of a point higher, maybe a point higher. You know, risk equals rate every day.
So if somebody else is looking at a 6, I may be looking at a 7, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, FHA, you know, not to always quote rates, but we were in the mid 5s yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean, it might be 6.5, might be 7, something like that, but you can still buy. And the argument, of course, is kind of goes into our second reason. I'm going to wait till I'm financially ready.
Right.
To buy a house. Do you hear that one?
I hear that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. What do they think they have to save?
And this is the problem, right? So you look on Zillow, you look on these other websites, and it quotes you a mortgage payment. And you and I know those are wildly inaccurate, right? So it's like they see this $375,000 house and it shows a $1,650 mortgage payment. And they're like, oh man, like I could buy this $375,000 house. Well, they start, contacting you to go see $370,000 to $400,000 homes. And then when they speak with the lender yourself, you're like, that rate's probably going to be about that payment's probably going to be about $1,000 more than you're seeing on Zillow there.
Yeah.
And then they get the letdown, right? So it's like all of those expectations. And now like, well, we want the payment to be around this much because we have, an exorbitantly high car payment or maybe two exorbitantly high car payments. And then it becomes like, okay, well, if we are going to have to, because then what always happens is you go show them that $290,000 home, and do you think they like it as much as the $400,000 house?
Of course not. No.
So then it's like, you have to deal with a client who's, not happy. And so it's okay. Well, then it becomes, okay, well, I need to pay debt down in order to clear up the debt to income so I can go and reach for that, $2,600 payment. So as a side note, I would really love if some of these websites would do a little bit better job of getting the accuracy on the monthly payments correct, because that would help a lot with client expectation. And so, and I'm sure you hear that. What do you mean it's going to cost $2,400 on Zillow? It says $1,600.
What I tell them, I walk them through like the payment. Here's basically what your payment's going to be for the mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, or mortgage insurance, or however it breaks down. And once I walk them through that, it's not as hard a blow, because they're like, oh, wait, okay, that makes sense. Oh yeah, well, if they have a favorite house, I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to say, okay, yeah, okay, that's it's in Seabrook. It's on the wrong side of 146. You're going to have flood insurance, and it's going to be, stupid high. I won't say that, of course, but I'll figure it into the payment. And but if you're on the other side, maybe insurance would be 1.35% of the price, which is generally the factor we use right now. Taxes in this area work out to about 2%. With a homestead exception, unless you're buying in a new neighborhood which has, stupid high taxes. So
then you're pushing the 3s.
But then when I tell them to pay, like, here's what it's going to be, and you can hear the wheels turning on the other end of the phone, and I'm like, hey, look, I don't fault Zillow's job is not to calculate accurate mortgage payments.
Right.
Their job is to get you to click or call, and since we're talking, it worked.
Yeah,
exactly, they did their job. So like, I can't really fault them for that. Our job is just like real estate agents probably shouldn't be trying to figure mortgage payments, just saying, because, there's a ton of factors that an agent may not know that a lender does.
Well, I saw an agent on my team literally quoting a mortgage payment and mortgage interest rate to a client. And I was like, hey, we've got really good people that do this. You should have their cell phone number. If you don't, they're in the Slack channel, make sure you reach out to them.
Yeah.
And so anyways,
can we talk about money for just one more second? Because, there's another factor, and that's down payment assistance.
Yeah.
They're often income limited.
Yeah.
And so, but I've had people bring $600 to closing, and once I tell people that, they're like, oh, yeah, if you have your seller pay all your closing costs, you have your down payment assistance pay your down payment, you bring a little bit of money to closing and you're good.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a misnomer. There's a lot of statistics out there that say people think you need to put 20% down. No, 3.5%,
Yeah.
depending on the program. And we work all those numbers and talk about it, and have that conversation. If we have that conversation on the front end, the whole process goes a lot smoother. By
Definitely.
the time I turn them over to the agent, they ought to know, like, okay, this house is really going to be, instead of, if it's a $400,000 house, 3,600 or whatever it's going to be, a month instead of 1,600.
Yeah.
That's an extreme example. We've seen it though, and then maybe they're not comfortable making it, but they're comfortable making, I don't know, a payment of $2,800.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we adjust that, and then they go out and they start looking at houses, and you're right. At some point, sometimes some go, I don't really want to live in a $250,000 house.
Yeah. It
So
happens all
then
the time.
they figure out ways to make that work. So, but it's certainly, I don't have the money is not really a great reason. We can have a conversation and try to figure out how to solve that pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue into the interest rate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So because interest rates have been high, well, I guess in historical standards, they've been pretty normal. They did get up to 8 there for a minute. And I do understand, like, a lot of people that I had as clients were like, hey, we're going to wait just a minute. And especially my investors, a lot of my investors buy with cash. So they're not really worried about interest rates. They'll refinance and pull cash out later if they want to. But a lot of investors who are using loans, if the rate for the general public is 8%, they're paying something even more than that. And then it's like cash flow issues. Can you make a rental property cash flow with a rate that high? It's very difficult. So, I did understand that excuse when the rates were high 7s to 8s. I really did. But now we're back in, as you said, the mid 5s.
Well, so, and so let's talk about, another one that, renting is better because the payment's cheaper renting. I can rent a 2-bedroom apartment with a garage for $1,900 a month.
Yeah.
I had a closing yesterday, and that's what the guy had. He had a 2-bedroom and 2-bath apartment, fairly nice complex, with a garage, and it was $1,900 a month.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to buy a house, generally it's going to come with a yard.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be larger than a 2-bedroom apartment normally. Like, you're getting a lot of things. So his payment of $2,400 is not, he's not stressing over it.
Right.
Now, some people would absolutely stress over that. And then, it gets into like, oh my gosh, now I own a house, I got all this responsibility. When I'm renting, I just call, the landlord. He comes. I mean, there's home warranties and such when you buy a house, but yeah, that's right. But what are you building in that?
Right.
There's studies that show, people that rent all their life are 200 times less wealthy when they retire than homeowners.
Yeah.
Because as you make that payment, 50 cents goes to interest of the first payment or whatever it is, or to principal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest goes to principal or interest, and so it just creeps down. But you are building wealth. You have equity in that home as you pay it down, even if the values stay the same.
Yeah.
Anybody that bought before COVID or during COVID, their values are up, what, 25%, 20%, depending on the neighborhood?
Yeah. I mean, and I've had clients before that, they bought their first home and they, paid it off in 10, 12 years just because they power paid it down. And then that particular client, he used the equity in that house multiple times. One, he used it once to start a business that became successful. Nice. He paid that off, and then he borrowed against it again and has built like a 7 or 8 unit rental portfolio that he just kind of bankrolled with the equity of that house. So, now he's got 7 or 8 cash flowing homes that are renters, that have renters in them rather. So, there's that as well. But I guess, I mean, people say theory and practicality are two different things, right? Like if the thought process that if I rent for $2,000 a month, but it costs me $3,000 a month to be a homeowner. So if I invest that delta of $1,000 a month every month for my 40-year working career, I could be richer than if I owned a home. You may be right. That math may shake out. I'm not a mathematician. However, generally, what do? Something comes up. Oh, you find a reason. Lifestyle creep. All of a sudden, that $1,000 is not going. It goes down to $400, $200. Then all of a sudden, you're not doing it at all. If you have the discipline to rent cheap, invest the difference, and you do it every month consistently for a long period of time, I'm not saying that there's not a renter out there that's not a multimillionaire. But when you talk about statistics across the broad population, homeowners are much wealthier than the non-homeowners.
Yeah. But it's like leasing a car. You got nothing at the end.
Right.
I got a friend leases, the same Chevy pickup every 2 years.
Yeah.
Gets a lot of miles on his lease, drives the crap out of it, walks to the dealership, hands him the keys, picks up the next one.
Yeah.
He has no equity in any of that.
Yeah.
It's not ever his. And that's kind of the issue with the home is that, home ownership is great. It's more stable for children. If you grew up in the same house, most of your life, and I grew up in the same house, for all my upbringing.
Chris doesn't even remember any other house besides the last one that we lived in Savannah. I'm older, so I remember a couple of the other ones.
But... Yeah. So, but the point is like there's all those benefits that go beyond, just the dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Tax deductibility. I'm not a CPA. I don't play one on TV.
Did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night?
I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night either. But I do know that I've seen a lot of people deduct the interest and taxes on their income taxes at the end of the year. So if you pay $15,000 in interest and taxes on your house, and you make, $100,000 a year, guess what? Now you're being taxed on 85 instead of 100.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty simple thing. But also there's another one that I hear a lot. And this one's not spoken. It's inferred. Mm-hmm. It's a pain in the ass. I get that. I've had people
what do you mean,
tell
to
me,
own a house?
So, the process, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so easy to rent. I just go... every year my rent goes up. I just keep on paying. Where our minds were thinking like, you're never going to own anything, but okay. Mm-hmm. You're paying somebody's mortgage.
Yeah.
Apparently your landlord's. But point is that, I've literally had people say, oh, that's too much. And you know what? I'm going to say something. It's going to sound really mean.
Let's hear it.
That may not be for you then. Homeownership might, because here's what happens. If you're talking somebody into the process, or they say, oh, it's so difficult. Sure, naturally we're going to take a run at like, well, let me tell you how simple it actually is. And if at that point, like, well, yeah, I'm not going to send you my documents until I find a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm under contract, then you can pull my hard pull credit report. Or, you're fighting them the entire way. And it's a miserable experience, not only for the agent and the lender and the seller, but for the buyer.
Right.
And those are the people that after they buy, they're like, man, I'm never doing that again. That was horrible.
Yeah.
Like, you could have had the transaction go perfectly, but they've got it may not be for you. You may be right. Maybe you're just a renter, and there's people that's okay.
Yeah. Get ready to do a credit, criminal, and background check every time you move, and have
right.
you're getting your privacy violated one way or the other. Either a lender's looking at your finances, or some random landlord is diving into the speeding ticket you got 5 years ago. So, that just is what it is. Exactly. Unless you just save up enough cash and you buy houses in cash, there's going to be some sort of diligence process that's done. People can't, if anybody remembers 2007, that's what happens when you just give loans to people without doing proper vetting as to whether or not they're qualified. So it's kind of like
gotta make sense.
We put some things in place to vet the people that we're loaning hundreds of thousands of dollars to, and that comes with a little bit of information gathering. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, I did have, and I was just thinking of this. I had last week, I had a girl apply. Now, this girl has been working on buying a house for 5 years.
Oh wow!
Her credit score is within 5 points of what it was 5 years ago.
Whoa!
It's a 495. That person telling me, "Hey, my credit's not good enough," they're absolutely right. Because here's the problem is that, if you've got a 490, you worked hard. Like, you worked hard to get that.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen overnight. You're missing car payments, credit card payments, all kinds of things over a long period of time. And, that might be one of those situations where renting is probably your best option.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
But good luck renting with the credit score like that.
Renting with a credit score like that is tough. But I mean, and she, she wanted to put her parents were going to give her like $250,000 to buy a $500,000 house. There's some tax loophole that allows that. I'm not familiar with it, but I've had friends do that with their kids.
Okay.
And so, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. The agent's like, well, I mean, isn't there some sort of non-qualified mortgage, non-QM, as they say in the industry, loan that'll do that? I'm like, here's the problem. The lender goes into
I know
this
a hard
knowing,
money guy at 15% interest that'll probably do that deal.
but he won't do a primary residence because in Texas, it's super hard to foreclose on a homestead.
Yeah.
Your primary residence. So, but let's say lender looks at this and they're like, oh, man, we're at 50% loan to value ratio. Like if this woman misses a payment, we're picking up that house. And
we hope she misses a payment.
We hope she misses a payment. Not even close to true. So here's the problem. You already know the lady doesn't pay her bills. And she's got a lot going on. I've gotten to know over the years. And I get it. She's got 5 kids, 4 different ex-husbands. I mean, it's a mess.
Holy moly, yeah.
But paying bills just isn't the top of the list. And that's okay.
It probably wouldn't be at the top of my list either if I was in that situation.
If she puts down 50% on this, and the lender already knows she doesn't pay her bills, that's predatory lending.
Right.
Like nobody on the planet's going to rent. Let's say that you do that loan for $250,000 and then she stops making the payments. What do you got to do?
Well, you got to foreclose. But
yeah.
Maybe this is
a single mom with 5 kids.
Don't you look like a nice guy?
Yeah, that's going to go over well at parties.
Exactly. Here's a dumb realtor question for you. I've sold houses for $250,000 in this area. They're not horrible. Mm-mm. If the parents are willing to give $250,000 for a house, why doesn't she just lower some expectations a little bit? I know she got a bunch of kids, but you could buy a nice 3-bedroom in, Dickinson or Alvin or something like that for $250,000.
Well, that's not the American way, Stephen. I mean, come on.
We are
lower your expectations. That's why you see, Escalades on every corner around here. These jacked up F-250s that were $90,000 to start with, and they put another $40,000 into lifting it and making sure everybody knows they need to compensate or whatever it is they're doing.
They got those 2 bolts hanging from the bottom on a chain.
It's fairly popular here in Texas, or was for a while.
The land of the $2,000 truck payment.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's just not. And in college, I had a buddy, and his parents lived in a fairly wealthy area of Cincinnati. I went to University of Cincinnati.
Are there nice areas of Cincinnati?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely
every Ohio person hates me.
Well, Procter and Gamble, is based in Cincinnati, as are other industries, and insurance is big there. Banking, Anyway, point is that his dad was an ophthalmologist.
Okay.
So made decent money. Good.
I can never remember. Is that the MD or is that the?
That's the MD.
MD.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So optometrist gets you the glasses. Ophthalmologist, they do the exams and all that other stuff.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
That's how that. I understand that. But anyway, point is that was his job. And Rob told me, he said, yeah, they paid cash for that house. Yeah, it took them 30 years to save for it. They rented that whole time. It took everything in me not to go, wait a second. I mean, they could have, how much money did they just waste in rent over those 30 years? Like, they could have the dang thing paid off by now.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. But, again, people that want to live like, some people just are renters, and it's okay. Not everybody's going to buy a house.
Yeah. And I know people that make good money that rent. I mean, they pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month for really nice places, high-rise condo apartments and, nice swanky places in downtown Houston. But, whatever, that's their thing. But I think for most people, the goal should be to reach home ownership at some point in time. And the average age of a first-time home buyer right now is creeping into 40, right? I know that's probably not great for our economy long-term if the average age of a first-time home buyer is in their 40s.
Right. And, as the baby boomers, they've aged out of it. They're selling, right? We've got a market. We don't have as many younger first-time buyers coming in. The couple I had a closing with yesterday, I mean, he's like 22.
Good for him.
He's my son's age,
Yeah.
And I told him that. I'm like, man, you are going to be so far ahead, down the road. You'll be happy you did this because you bought it, you built equity. Yeah, every so often, like air conditioner is going to go out or whatever. I mean, worst case scenario, you take a home equity loan out to pay for it or something, or home improvement loan. But that's going to happen. You know, it's part of it. But you just think you're raising the kids that you guys are talking about having now. That's what I'm talking to this buyer about. I'm like, man, that's great.
Good for him, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had a client that bought, actually, he was a referral from you, but he ended up buying the new build.
Right.
I think he was like 23 or 24, him and his fiance. And
yeah,
it was cool. I mean, to see, because there's so much of the news, right? There's so many headlines out there. And it is true that the first time home buyer right now is kind of the MO for what they look like is a 40-year-old married, whatever. But there are quite a few people that are bucking that trend.
Yeah.
And, I've sold multiple homes in 2025 to people that were in their mid to early 20s. So 25 or younger. That was probably 4 or 5 closings last year for me.
So, let me just, and we should probably wrap here. But, I always want to look at people's situation, even if they're thinking they might possibly buy a house ever.
Yeah.
Right. Let's take a look and see what you got, see where you are, where can you go, from here, and then, let them make the decision. People are afraid to talk to, their loan officer, right? I mean, they talk to you, they're going to see the pretty houses, you're the pretty boy anyway. So like, yeah, totally, Steven's going to go around in his, high class Kia, drive him around town, right? Like, that's the fun part. But then they never. If you tell somebody to call me, I keep those
cloth seats pristine. I'll have
absolutely. And if you, if you then turn around and say, hey, you need to call a lender, here's Mark's number, a lot of them won't call because they're afraid to have the conversation. They think it's going to be miserable or painful, or somebody's going to, berate them for missing payments in college 10 years ago.
Mark's actually going to make fun of you for how poor you are.
It's like, well, come on, but I always, when I do get the opportunity to, and it's preferable that I call them because, otherwise they'll put it off.
Yeah.
Right. And have, first of all, you find most loan officers are human.
Yeah.
And so are real estate agents.
AI hasn't taken us over yet.
There are a lot of loan officers out there that are high pressure, real estate agents that are high pressure. They're going to, you're going to buy a house whether you like it or not. Not me, not you. You find a good agent, and usually they come with a good lender, relationship. And so, and then I always tell people, like, you know what? I mean, if you buy tomorrow, you're ready.
Yeah.
We got you approved. You want to buy a house tomorrow, you run across the dream house, absolutely, you're ready to go. If you don't buy a house for 5 years, that's okay. I'm not smart enough to do anything else. So I'm probably going to be doing loans 5 years from now anyway.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to be here. If you have questions in between, I'm going to be here. And often that takes a lot of that pressure away. And they're like, oh, okay, this I can really, they get that block out of the way, and then they can really give it some thought and consideration.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next week.